This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and we're going to look at a new iPhone camera feature just for the iPhone 7 Plus, the one with the dual cameras on the back, and that's called portrait mode, which really means faux bokeh, depth of field effect, all that sort of thing. That feature is coming out next month, but it is available as a beta now, and we've installed it. If you're willing to install beta operating system versions on your iPhone, you can actually put it on too and test it out, or you can just let us do it for you. It actually does a pretty good job, and we're going to find out how good it is now. So you know Apple, everything is simple here. You don't even have to switch to the 2x mode. You just drag it over to portrait mode, and it does depth of defocus, and then you take the picture. You can tap the focus if you want, but it's as simple as choosing portrait mode. Nothing to worry about. The only things you have to be aware of is it has to be in good light, because they want to be able to use OIS and the even wider aperture on the wide-angle lens in dark situations, and you have to be no closer than 2 feet, which is about 2/3 of a meter from your subject, and your subject has to be, as it says right there, within 8 feet away. And obviously, everything right now is at about the same distance, so it's not going to give us any depth of field effects. If it was something that was closer or separated from the background, we would start to see it. In fact, what happens if I put my hand here? See? Look at that. The background is blurred out, so you get a real-time preview of it. So let's take a look at some sample photos next that we've taken with that. So let's see how it did. This is the photo with the bokeh effect on of our friendly broken-handed Buddha. And it looks, well, pretty good, actually, but there are some issues. Look right over here. You can see the haloing around his head where it didn't completely mask him. Also, look at the palm of his hand right here. See, that's a little blurred out and bokeh. It shouldn't be. It should be just as sharp as the front edge of his hand. And as we zoom in, that becomes more apparent there. Still in all, it's a really good effort. And the more interesting thing is to compare it to a real camera. So as you folks probably know by now, and maybe you follow me on Instagram, I'm a pretty serious photographer. So I happen to have a Sony A7 camera with Sony's 55mm f1.8 lens. That's quite a nice lens, and it happens to pretty much match the focal length of the telephoto lens. And here's what the Sony did. And let's go back. And let's zoom out. And one more time, back to the Sony. Do you see how close that is? There's a bit more blurring over here, but in this case, other than the iPhone screwing up the palm of his hand and creating a little haloing, it's pretty close to the effect of my 55mm full-frame lens, and I put it at an aperture of f2.8 to match the aperture of the iPhone 7 Plus telephoto lens. So that's one of the better examples. And it also, the phone will save a non-bokeh version, so you can see what it would have looked like otherwise. And there you have it. Yeah, right? It's not nearly as pleasing as this, even with this little bit of artifacting. Hey, once you upload it to teeny tiny Instagram, nobody's going to see that so much. But that's much more busy and less interesting. It doesn't work just with faces. Indeed, if this Buddha's face is being recognized by the facial recognition algorithm used here we have a photo of a chair. Not really very exciting, but here we have it with bokeh. It did a good job here. Obviously, no faces here. Much more pleasing picture, isn't it? When you have the background a little bit blurred. More than a little bit. Again, it really is pushing toward the effect of, say, an f2.8 aperture, which is a pretty wide aperture, which creates a pretty pronounced bokeh. But it's not perfect. Here we have a picture of a yucca. And it's very detailed, but the background is also very busy, isn't it? This is something where you would want to isolate. And here's what the iPhone's beta app did. You see this? For some reason, it's blurring right directly behind the flowers, but then it's not blurring over here. Even though it's about equidistant, it's not a perfect algorithm. So that looks very strange and very artificial. And let's go back to the normal view so you can see. And we have sharpness right here in the flower itself and in the branches, and some of that gets bokeh away. Whoopsie. So it's not perfect yet. It is still in beta, but it is the most promising and the most pleasing. For something like this, for example, most of the other camera phone attempts that we've seen have done a very swirly, artificial looking blur where absolutely everything except for what it thinks is the subject is kind of Van Gogh swirled. You know what I mean? Not very natural looking. This does a gradation. You can see right here at this area right here, the ground is sharper, and then it gets a bit less sharp, and then we have up top, the farthest distance is the least sharp. That's the way it should be done if you're going to do faux bokeh or faux depth of field effects.